I'm Adi, I'm Games BD Manager, I'm based in Tel Aviv, and I work with Israeli and Turkish gaming companies. And yeah, I camp and I win games because of that. So let's start with a question. By raise of hands, who wants to make more money from their games? Raise your hands. Yeah, that makes sense because you are here today. And the obvious follow-up question should be, how can you make more money from your games? Harry Markowitz, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, said he will never be 100% invested in stocks or bonds or cash, basically saying he will never put all his eggs in one basket. And when thinking about it, why mobile games should be any different? Why rely on one source of revenue and not try to diversify your revenue streams? And our industry is set up in a very unique way, which usually game genres determine the game monetization you have. So in hyper-casual games, we usually see ad monetization. In RPG and strategy games, we usually see IP monetization. And this isn't a bad thing, but today I wanted to take a step back and rethink this assumption. Ask yourself, does that make sense to focus on one monetization strategy in your games? And what can you learn from other genres? And what can you learn from other developers? So today I'm going to talk about why diversify monetization strategies in mobile games. Then I'm going to discuss different trends around this topic. And then we're going to finish with Gram Games on stage, who are going to share with us their journey of revenue diversification. So why diversify? As Markowitz said, by diversifying revenue streams, you're actually decreasing the risk you have in games. But more than that, you have more options to monetize your audience, which can create an uplift in revenue. Another reason is based on the Google Play data, and it's actually the first time we're sharing that on stage. So let's take a look. What you see in the graph in the x-axis is the percentage of revenue coming from top 5% of spenders in the game. What you see in the y-axis is the reactivation rate of churn buyers, or how likely is the game to get back churn buyers. Yeah, take a picture, that's a good one. And what we found out in our data, that we actually have a correlation between the two things. So if you look at the bottom right corner, you see that games that are really concentrated on revenue from the top 5% of spenders they have are actually less likely to get back churn buyers. On the other hand, if you look at the top left corner on the star sign, you see that games that are really good at getting back churn buyers are less dependent on the top 5% of spenders they have. So what that means is that trying to get $1 from a larger audience is actually more sustainable than trying to get $100 from a high-value user. So what trends do we see around monetization diversification? Subscriptions, rewarded ads, and IAP. So subscription is quite new in mobile games, but rewarded ads and IAP, although not new per se, we see some interesting trends with them, and we are going to discuss it later. But let's start with subscriptions. So who is using subscriptions in their games? Please raise your hand. OK, yeah, a few hands. That makes sense. And subscription is not a foreign concept in gaming. We've seen that on PC and console, but it's actually quite a new concept in mobile games. And we see more and more developers who are using this strategy on top of the IAP they have in their game in order to create a premium experience for users. And actually, on Google Play, we see a growing momentum, with more than 70% year-on-year growth in subscribers in games. And developers who are using this strategy are reporting different benefits of doing so. So Mixi, for example, reported that subscribers play 20% more than they used to. And Scopely reported that subscribers have much higher LTV. And another reason of using subscriptions is that can actually help you diffuse the feeling of regrets in game. So what happens sometimes that users binge on IAP, and then they feel regret doing so. But if you use subscriptions, you can actually change that. So instead of eating all the Halloween candies in one day, user will eat one candy each day for a long period of time, and then they feel less regret doing so. So how to design subscription experience? So that's something that requires a mindset shift. You can use your IAP SKUs, repackage them, and offer them as subscription bundles. It can actually work for you, but we think that you can do more than that. But while IAP is more about ownership of things, users are paying to own and keep something in the game, subscription is more about access to a premium experience. Access users can gain and also lose. And you have two main use cases for subscriptions in games. The first one is to convert new buyers who are often looking for really good deals. So if you take a look at the example, you see that Scopely, on top of the IAP deal, are offering really exclusive rewards, like loss protection in the game and also higher daily caps. And they're offering this bundle very early on in the game, just after first-time user experience. And the idea behind that is they're trying to also make sure that new buyers will stay longer in the game and play longer sessions. And second use cases for a subscription is to create a loyalty program for your most valuable users. So these users are often looking for premium experience, rewards for the commitment they have to the game, and also a prestige feeling. And in the example, you see that Rodeo, for the VIP users, are offering quite a lot. Extra currency, exclusive tournaments, early access to new content, and access to a special durable. So that's quite a lot. So that was subscriptions. And let's move to rewarded ads. So is it a new trend? You're obviously asking yourself why I'm speaking about rewarded ads. So it's not a new monetization model. We've seen that for a couple of years now. But what the Google AdMob team found out recently in the research they did is that IP-heavy developers who didn't focus on ads before are starting to rethink the monetization strategy they have in games, and as a result, they're implementing more and more rewarded ads. And that's why we see more hybrid games today in the industry, with both IP and rewarded ads implemented in them. So why use rewarded ads? So we have a couple of reasons for that. First of all, you can monetize your non-paying users with rewarded ads. You actually give your users the option to choose the currency they would like to pay with, time or money. It can also increase your engagement in the game of both payers and non-payers. Users are getting back more frequently into the game and also play longer sessions. And the third key reason of using rewarded ads, and you may not be familiar with that, is that can actually predict IP conversion in games. So what Congregate found out recently in their games is that new users who watch an ad in the first ever session they have in the game are actually much more likely to make an in-app purchase. And they saw an uplift of between 250 to 500% in that conversion rate, which is really amazing. So how to design a rewarded ads experience? We know it can be a bit tricky, so we're sharing with you an AdMob framework that can help you in the process. So you need to think about placement of the ads, user targeting, cadence, and measurement. And let's see what Congregate are doing for each one of these points. So first of all, the ads should be part of game economy design, and should give something meaningful to your users. But at the same time, make sure it doesn't compete directly with your IP. And every user should have access to the ads, but if you decide to remove this access to paying users, don't forget to give them the rewards. And more is not always better. They found out that between 6 to 8 ads per user per day is the best practice. And lastly, don't forget to measure important metrics like ad viewership and frequency, because you can segment your users with that and optimize the performance of each segment. OK, so let's talk about IAP a little bit. So what we see with IAP is very similar to what we see with rewarded ads. An increasing number of developers who didn't focus on IAP before, who really focus on ads, are starting to shift that focus. And they're either implementing IAP in existing titles or starting to develop new IAP-based games for the first time. Tabs Games, for example, a Brazilian company renowned for hyper-casual games, decided to double down on IAP in their Bid Wars titles, which is an auction-like strategy games, really nice games. And they've been working very closely with the Play team in LATAM on that. And in less than 2 years, they saw an uplift of more than 200% in IAP revenue. So that was a game changer for the company. And as a result, IAP today is part of the company's strategy. So why developers are looking to diversify with IAP? So first of all, successful IAP games can be managed and developed by really small teams and simple operation infrastructures. In some cases, we see teams as small as 10 people who are responsible for multi-million success stories. IAP games also rely less on massive number of installs. So instead of focusing on game launches, you actually shift the focus to more long-term sustainable KPIs like game engagement. And IAP games is also all about taking back control of your own revenue instead of depending on other companies to provide you this revenue. And if you have the right tools in place, you have the flexibility of testing and changing and optimizing your game. So for those of you who are looking to diversify with IAP for the first time, really double down on that. That's a basic framework for you that can help you in this process. So first of all, you need to think about game economy design very early on in the development process, because it's part of a core gameplay loop, so don't forget that. Then think how to convert users to be paying users, or how to create a value for money perception in your game. And lastly, you need to think how to retain your users and repeat the purchase events. Basically shifting the focus from a one-time event, a game launch, to treat your game as a service. And we asked Rodeo Chinese developer and publisher to share with us some insight on this framework. And the reason we asked Rodeo is that they have an amazing story. They're also known for hyper-casual games, and they have a leading title, Rodeo Stampede. How many of you know Rodeo Stampede? It's a pretty known game. Yeah, OK. And they decided to double down IP in that game. In less than a year, they managed to shift the ads to IP ratio in the game. So IP today is 60% of the revenue, and only a couple of months ago, it was 30%. And they showed us some insight that can help you also to think about IP. So first of all, you need to keep your design very simple at first, because then you can add more layers and change that quite easily later on. But at the same time, try and monetize as much users as you can by using different currencies. So they're using an ad currency in the game and also an IP currency that targets different type of users. And they found out that in order to convert more users to be paying users, it's really valuable to understand what is unique about each segment and what excites them in the game, where they're staying and playing longer session in the game. Because then you can create targeted offerings, which makes sense for each segment. And last, it's really important to invest in more content, either by deepening the content you already have. So if you have characters, add more of them, or by adding more system and features to the game. In order to create a live ops plan with many events and promotions, it's really valuable to have a system that you can customize, because then you don't need to invest so much time and effort in each event and each promotion. You can do much more with much less. OK, so we discussed very briefly subscriptions, rewarded ads, and IAP. And I gave you a small glimpse into new opportunities. Hopefully, it will lead to have meaningful discussion with your team about monetization. Ask your team, is the current status quo you have in your company your best strategy? And now I want to welcome on stage Eren, who is going to share with us a really amazing journey of Gram Games around revenue diversification. So please welcome him on stage. Yeah, thank you. Maybe over there.
Middle.
Yeah. Maybe. So let me just introduce you before we start.
Sure.
So Eren is the Chief Revenue Officer of Gram Games. He joined the company 2 years ago. Before that, he was a senior manager at McKinsey. And at Gram Games, he's leading the production and monetization of the company. And he also led the transformation of the company from an ad revenue-based company to a majority IP revenue-based company. So really thanks for joining the talk.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. So let's dive into the first question.
Sure.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about Gram
Sure.
Games? What kind of games do you have?
So Gram Games was primarily founded as a company that makes quick games, make them fast, iterate fast, fail fast, and then launch them to the market separately with lean teams. That's why initially they focused on ad-based games, like hyper-casual games. I think so far we have about 9 games in our portfolio, and 8 of them are close to fully ad-funded and hyper-casual to casual games. The most famous ones being 1010 and 6. Building on that, we have recently, last year, launched Merge Dragons, which is right now 95% IAP-based. So we have shifted, even though using the core loops and mechanics that exist in hyper-casual games, we have actually successfully transitioned into a more IAP majority revenue source. So right now, we're probably more than 60% IAP revenues as a studio, and 30 to 40% ad revenues.
So we've been working together for a couple of months now, and we had different discussions on that decision to diversify with IAP. So can you share with the crowd a little bit why you did it, what was the reason behind the decisions, and when did it happen?
Sure thing. So ads business is, I mean, in my view, it's very useful if you're one of the two. Like you're either a small company, small studio with people that focus on quick game, like smaller games, launching them fast, like the initial stage that we used to be, or if you are a publisher that can really churn out, that can really produce games really fast, like one game a week or something, and you can rely on publishing, other studios to help you. But if you're somewhere in the middle, probably focusing on one game or a few games and focusing on a more stable revenue source that is not affected seasonally or that does not rely on other intermediaries between yourselves and the players. Because ad revenues are not, you can't really control what ads people see. You can't really control the volatility on the ad revenues. So you can only manage it by increasing your number of games as the business grows. So that was the core reason why we wanted to switch. And we have used our merge mechanic that we developed in our other games, like Merged and Merge Town, and we used it in our Merge Dragons. It was the core of the game. But we've used it, we merged it with a camp, so that people actually have items that they merged up, and items that they actually wanted to keep. So this has then turned into a higher retention, higher engagement, higher ARPU game eventually.
And when did it happen, the decision?
So this was around early last year. This was around actually end of 2016, probably. So at that point, we had 3 hyper-casual games, and we had realized that every new game actually boosted your revenue, but the exponential growth was not there. It was almost more linear. So what happened was we said to go to the next stage, we need to have a game on top grossing charts. We need to have a game that has a stable number of DAU, people that you acquire stick with you. It's not like the leaky bucket example, like people actually go in and then they leave. We wanted a more longer-term engagement with them. And then we have decided to open up a studio in London, actually. So up until that time, we were in Istanbul, and we set up the company and hired everybody we hired at that point there. But to do the switch into IAP, you also need people who have done this before, and with people with more expertise, more experience. And then London overall is a city that's very attractive, that you can actually have these people join you, join the team, and then work on this game. So that's what we did, and launched Merge Dragons from our London office, from our London studio. And we launched it in June of last year. So from then on, constantly iterated the game, added new features. Even today, I think the LTV is probably 3 times what it used to be when we first launched it.
So other than opening an office in London, what were the next steps following that decision? What did you need to change the company? What did you need to start from scratch?
I mean, at that point, so we knew what we were good at, and we knew what we required to also improve on our side. Like, we were people with Gram Games, like with the exception of me, is a very developer-oriented management base. So I think we were very good at like going to the code. Let's work on this for 2 nights and get it out of the way. Let's just have like 4 Red Bulls and then do this type of a mindset, right? But I think we did not know, like, have the ideas about like the business, the management, the layers, and the typical performance management. So up until that point, we said, let's keep the culture we built. Let's keep the good things about having a startup mindset. And it's the type of people that when something stops working, they always like open it up and see like what's wrong, like tinkering, like always going into the details. So we tried to get people who share this vision, share this mindset, but with people who also have done this previously with the IEP games, so that not to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So that's what we tried to bring in. And we also brought maybe about 10 people from our Istanbul studio to London, and then hired around 20 more people directly to our London office. But these people are people who have worked on level designs, people who have worked on character designs for an IEP game. These things really matter. Like in hyper casual, I think the core thing is like, do you give enough feedback to the players, or is it really enough differentiation? But you don't really focus on when you level up, does the character get very different, or you don't really focus on a longer term engagement, but you focus on your retention metrics like D1, D7. So we hired people with this expertise and combined them while trying to maintain our company culture, and seemed to work well, I guess.
And what is, can you share a little bit more about what exactly is different in developing an IP-based game compared to an ad-based game? What kind of metrics do you look at when you do that?
I think it almost feels like, to us, like IP game feels closer to making a movie than like almost making an hyper-casual game. I mean, it's a very extreme example, but we made 1010 in actually 10 hours. So it was a hyper-casual game, but I think it literally took like a Thursday morning, an idea, and by Thursday evening, the game was ready. We put it on the market, we saw good numbers, and then we launched the game. But IAP is a different story because you don't really make your money based on your averages. You make money based on your tail. What that means is, on a hyper-casual game, you actually see D1 retention, D7 retention, what's our average revenue per our user per day. Whereas in an IAP game, at the end of the day, you focus on the top 5% of your most engaged players. So your average player is not directly correlated with your average revenues. You actually care about your top 5%, top 10% of your engaged players. How is their experience? So comments matter more, ratings matter more, communities matter more. All of these things, like one rating or one review you read somewhere could have really extensive implications for you. So that's why you need to be very much more, I think, almost iterative. In a hyper-casual game, it's almost like trading, like you acquire users, they play the game for a few days, they leave, and then you watch that. Whereas in a IAP game with a higher long-term retention, it becomes like an overall experience, almost like how is this person now on their day 35, what type of dragons they see, what type of items they interact with. We always have like our junior, mid, high-level player, where they're at in their experience, how much more time are they expected to spend, what is their level of engagement, how is that varying. So those things are very different. What we tried to bring them in from our past experience with hyper-casual games is it's very hard to launch an IAP game fast, and we're not still perfect at it. But what you can do is you could take certain loops and certain mechanics that that work, put them out first, and in D1, D7, see how they do. Like set like more intermediary expectations, KPIs on what you think you should have, and only then act on it. That for us is the similarity, but the core difference is more about engagement rather than averages.
Okay, in retrospect, other than the acquisition by Zynga, were you happy with what happened following the launch of Merge Dragons?
We were very happy, and I think even internally, that's you share things at a different level with your players when it's when it's a more immersive game. Because when I don't know how many people here played 1010 or 6, but those are the games that you don't feel. Those are the games like you're never like a crazy 1010 fan. Like it's the type of game you would play that wouldn't really intimidate you. You would play it for a few minutes in a day and then put your phone down. But in Merge Dragons, you really see people who are fans of that game even more than you are, like as the person like who made the game, right? You see people who submit dragon requests, who have ideas, who spent many hours on a day on that game. Those things really, I think emotional fulfillment is much higher in that sense. The teams that work on it, the ownership they feel is also much higher. I think on hyper-casual is more almost about you make a game, try it, ship it, and it's almost like you have no personal connection whatsoever because there's a high chance that that game will not be launched. Whereas in an IAP game, it's about the feature you're adding. What about we add this chest here? What happens if we add the ship here? And that it brings goodies, to our players. It's much more of a deeper discussion. And it's a live product at the end of the day, yeah.
Okay, so we need to close that part of the session. It was really interesting, so thank you, Eren, for sharing that with the audience. And just to conclude this session, we teased you a little bit about diversifying your revenue streams. And if you have any questions and you need help with that, feel free to reach out to Google Play team members, and we'll be happy to help you with that. And we have some times for questions now, so we are open for questions if there are any. Yeah, over there. Do you have a mic? No. Just a second. The mic is on the way.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. My question is, do you believe that the combination of in-app purchases and in-app advertisement is beneficial at all times? Because what you can see in top grossing games, like strategy games, like over 70% rely totally on in-app purchases only. They don't have in-app advertisement. So why do you think they're doing it? And if you believe that perhaps this in-app advertisement would break their in-app purchases ecosystem?
You want to answer that?
Yeah. So very good question. I mean, up until August, we did not have any ads on Merge Dragons. So it was fully IAP based. In August, we've added the rewarded option. The ads revenues, there's a bit of, I'd say, almost a lack of transparency on the way today. You get your ads revenues on a per player basis. Like you can't see how much revenue you get for one of your players. So it's very hard to actually allocate your ad revenues into players and then compare like if it leads to any cannibalization or not, because this person watches ads. So that's why you go with manual filters. You either filter the number of videos they see or the number of players that are able to watch the video. So if they make a payment, they take them out of the rewarded video. What we did was we capped the number of videos that people can watch and only capped it, I think, at 2 per our players. That's why for us, and we could see the revenues, and it actually added like an incremental benefit to the time where we had the videos, to the time we did not have versus the time where we had. And I think it's a choice, really. Like it depends also how you monetize your player base, like where you want to give that rewarded option to your players. To us, it's been beneficial so far.
You have one more question, if we have any. One more. No, last chance. Okay. Yeah, over there. Yeah, thank you.
2 simple questions, if it's possible. The first, what is the split in your audience between women and men in Merge Dragons? And the second, how you, if it's possible, exactly track the numbers of revenue from IAP and ads when you're changing something?
Thanks. Thank you. The men versus women split, like we don't collect extensive information from our players, but based on, I think, where we see with people who log on using social media, we think it's around 65% female. We don't do anything specific about this. Like I think based on our current marketing and currently optimized, what we think is optimized marketing, that this is the audience that we ended up with, so it skews female. And the second question was, I think, how do we, it was how we split, like how do we see ads versus IAPs?
How do you see the impact of change in the game? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, when we generally add a new feature, we leave around like a month or longer testing periods. It's harder to do the A/B test on ads because ads, again, like many things change and it's hard. Like what we're lucky with is that we have 8 other ad-based games. So we can also compare the ad revenue, the CPMs between those games and this game. Like, is it really change? When we change something, does the ad revenue here grow more than the others? IAP is generally easier to see, like at a per player where they're at in their game. You could see like if something increases or decreases, you can track it more effectively. But ads, you have to group. That's the core problem.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Eren.
Thank you.
Hope it was interesting for you guys. And that's it for that session.
Thank you.